Joining me now is Michael McHugh, former chief of staff for tax policy on President Trump's transition team. Mike, there was a reason why the president wanted to stick to 20%, right?
Absolutely. Look, the lower corporate rate is the most pro-growth element of tax reform. Both the House and the Senate got to 20%. This week, unfortunately, we're hearing rumblings that might go from 20% to 22%. And, there are plenty of dials that can be turned to raise revenue. And I'm arguing that this is probably not the best dial to turn when we're looking at really improving economic growth.
There's another thing about the corporate rate, which is the Senate plan delays it until 2019. And if you delay a tax cut, you delay the economic recovery or boost that the economy gets, right?
Right. And, we'll see what comes out of conference, but I'm not the most opposed to the one-year delay in the corporate tax cut.
Really? Because we've seen it, Mike, before. We saw a delay in the 1981 Reagan tax cut. That helped to lead us into a recession that lasted for about 19 months, and we didn't come out of that recession until the tax cuts kicked in. So we've seen what happens with a delay before, and it ain't pretty.
Well, you could also argue that, if the business is looking at a 35% tax rate next year with 100% expensing and your enhanced Section 179 depreciation, you're going to put all of your investment into next year, into 2018, and push off your profits till 2019.
I know, but
there's an argument
I got
there.
to tell you, we've seen, not only then, we also saw it happen under George W. Bush. There's the other problem, which is simplification. The president, when the president's folks and the president himself touted the program in the spring and the summer, they talked about it's going to be a much more simple tax code, which we all desire, make it easier for everybody. Ronald Reagan did the same thing. Let me just play a little cut of how he sold simplification to the American public for his tax plan. Play the bite.
Great.
The present tax system has 14 different brackets of tax rates ranging from 11 to 50%. We would take a giant step toward an ideal system by replacing all that with a simple 3-bracket system.
So simple, so clear. He brought the American people with him to support those tax cuts. You can't do that if you keep the same number of brackets, which the Senate plan does.
Well, that's right. And again, we'll see what comes out of conference. But I do want to point out that the increased standard deduction is huge for simplification. By having a $12,000, $24,000 for a couple standard deduction, you're going to see only 5% of taxpayers itemizing. That's huge for simplification. So again, we may see fewer brackets come out of conference than the Senate has now. But I do think that we shouldn't underestimate that increased standard deduction.
And by the way, there is the president walking down the steps of Marine One. The Marines come to a sharp salute. President gets a handshake from one of the generals accompanying him on that trip. Of course, there's a lot of military folks that go on these trips. Sometimes the president says a word or two. It doesn't look as though he's going to do it. He gives a cursory glance to the press, gives them a little wave, but that's about it. So, Michael, do you think that as a result of this conference between House and Senate on the tax bill, we will have a shrinkage of the number of brackets?
I'm going to leave that up to the conferees to decide, but I think, looking at, I've got to, but, looking at that corporate rate, I really hope that we can keep it at 20% and that we can turn dials elsewhere, which the tax writers in the House and the Senate have been very smart to include plenty of areas where they can find that extra $100, $200 billion of revenue they're looking for going into this weekend.
All right. The president is going to give a final wave as he steps into Air Force One on his way to Pensacola for that big rally in Florida, which is in the same media market as the Roy Moore campaign. And since you're an economist, you're spared from talking about the politics of that particular race. Michael, great to see you. Thank you for being with us. Have a great weekend.
Very much.
Appreciate it.
You too. Thanks, David.